10, Kathy Griffin. A lot of people see Kathy Griffin as somewhat of an offensive person because her comedy style is very open and can be a little crude. Because of this, she's been in her fair share of controversies, but one of her biggest scandals happened back in 2017 when she made headlines after she posted a graphic photo of her holding a replica of Donald Trump's head. When this photo was originally released, all hell broke loose online and in the news, and her career was severely damaged. Because of the backlash she suffered as a result of this post, she was reportedly blacklisted from Hollywood. CNN ended up cutting ties with her, resulting in her being fired from her job co-hosting the network's annual New Year's Eve broadcast, and this whole scandal really just caused her to lose a lot of credibility in the industry. Originally, she apologized for her actions and said that she regretted posting it after seeing how so many people took offense to it, but she seemed to have gone back on that regret as she reposted the same infamous photo to her social media following the events of the US presidential election. Luckily, she can't get fired again for the same thing. At number 9, Holly Hunter. Imagine recording an entire film just for the studio to end up firing you and scrapping all of your work. Well, this is what happened to Holly Hunter back in 2005 when she was fired from the animated film Chicken Little. We all know the film as being centered around a little chicken who thinks the sky is falling, but we also know the main character as being a boy. Turns out that originally the character of Chicken Little was a girl and she was voiced by Holly Hunter. The actress had lent her voice to the film and recorded her lines of the entire film working on the movie for about 8 months. But sadly, after all that hard work, the studio decided to take the character in a different direction and made Chicken Little into a male character. Holly was subsequently fired and replaced by Zach Braff, who re-recorded all the lines for the film and had his voice pitched up in post-production. I honestly think it would suck so much to have put in all that work for nothing, but at least Holly has an interesting story to tell, even though it's pretty unfortunate. Before I carry on with the video, I would like to ask you guys to consider leaving a like on this video if you're enjoying it so far, and also if you're interested in gameplay content, why not head on over to my gaming channel Viper Girl and check out what I've got going on over there. I upload every single day, so there's always something new and entertaining to enjoy over there. At number 8, Edward Norton. Anyone who's a big fan of the MCU knows the ins and outs of every movie and every bit of behind-the-scenes trivia, so those people already know about the drama surrounding the Hulk in the franchise. But for those who don't know, Mark Ruffalo wasn't always the big green guy, and the role was originally played by another actor who got fired. Actor Edward Norton was the one who first took on the role in the 2008 movie The Incredible Hulk, and though that movie was pretty successful, they fired him from the role and decided to recast the character for the 2012 movie The Avengers, which is where Mark Ruffalo took on the role. Edward was reportedly fired from this role because of clashes on set. Some people have said that Edward would be very controlling on set, and reports say that the one defining moment that really solidified Marvel's decision to fire Norton came after he and some studio executives got into a pretty heated argument over their desire to add more action scenes to the film. That decision did not sit well with Norton because he wanted the film to be more dramatic, not action-based, and apparently he hulked out when he didn't get his way. Honestly, Mark's portrayal of the Hulk is so spot on that I couldn't imagine how the MCU would have gone on so successfully without him. At number 7, Gina Carano. One Hollywood star who was recently fired is Gina Carano, and she was let go from Disney after a lot of drama caused the company to sever their ties with the actress. There were several reasons why they wanted to fire Gina. She had been facing backlash for many of her controversial tweets, some of which included messages like comparing being a Republican to being Jewish during World War II, making claims of voter fraud during the 2020 election, as well as making anti-mask posts. There were also reports that there was a lot of conflict between the actress and some company executives while she was working on The Mandalorian, which caused people to want to let her go. According to sources, Disney had been looking to cut ties with the actress for a while because of their conflict with her, so the social media scandal she was facing became the last straw for them, and they ended up letting her go. Seems like her firing was a long time coming. At number 6, Winston Marshall. I don't know if you could really consider being kicked out of a band as getting fired, but I think it's close enough. Mumford & Sons musician Winston Marshall was recently let go from the folk rock band, and some say that his career is kind of over. The musician recently came under fire after he was called out on Twitter for praising the book Unmasked inside Antifa's radical plan to destroy democracy. The book in question is said to, quote, condemn the destructive rise of Antifa. The content resonated so deeply with Winston that he even tweeted the book's author where he called him a brave man for publishing this content. This message of support angered a lot of people and resulted in him facing mass scrutiny from many fans. After facing this backlash, Marshall tweeted a series of apologies to everyone he offended, saying that he understands that people, including many of his bandmates, have been hurt by his comments, and also saying, quote, "For now, please know that I realize how my endorsements have the potential to be viewed as approvals of hateful, divisive behavior. I apologize as this was not my intention." The guitarist faced a lot of backlash from fans online as they pointed out how his personal views can come across as highly offensive. Because of his cancellations by fans, the band reportedly held an emergency meeting where they discussed Winston's place in the group, and in response to the band's actions of kicking him out, he said that he was going to use this time off to, quote, "examine his blind spots." There hasn't been any information saying whether or not he will be returning to the group and what this might mean for his career. At number 5, Piers Morgan. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry's interview with Oprah was one of the biggest newsmakers of the year so far, and it still has a lot of people talking and sharing criticisms. In the interview, a lot of deep personal insight was shared, and many comments Meghan and Harry made were heavily discussed by news outlets. One of the things that was said by Meghan Markle that was picked apart the most were her comments on her mental health before she and Harry split from the royal family. Meghan said that there was a period of time where she was really depressed and had thoughts of taking her own life. Broadcaster Piers Morgan decided to pick this information apart and said that in his opinion he, quote, "didn't believe a word Meghan said." As a result, Piers and the network he worked for faced mass scrutiny for saying such a thing about someone's mental health, as it was seen as diminishing and offensive to dismiss the severity of such a thought as taking your own life. Because of the backlash he faced, Piers was promptly canceled online and later announced that he would no longer be working for the network. This was a crazy reason to lose his job, not because it's outrageous, but because this all could have been avoided had he not said what he said about another person's mental health. At number 4, Jussie Smollett. Here's a scandal that caused a lot of drama and ended in unemployment. Former Empire actor Jussie Smollett found himself in a lot of hot water for a while following the scandal and subsequent backlash he faced after he was caught making false police statements about an alleged hate crime. In January 2019, Jussie, who is an openly gay man, claimed to have been attacked by a group of people wearing masks who put a rope around his neck and shouted slurs at him. Jussie filed a statement with police recounting the event. However, after a police investigation ensued, they found that the claim was fake. It was later discovered that Jussie made the whole thing up because he was unhappy with his salary from Empire and figured that he could get more from an event like the one that he fabricated. The charges laid against him for making this false report were eventually dropped, but similar charges emerged last year, and Jussie was indicted. As a result of his scandal and legal issues, Jussie was promptly fired from Empire and has struggled to make things work for him in the industry since then. There was even a call to blacklist him from the entire industry. This just goes to show you that money can make people do just about anything, even make really bad choices. At number 3, Hartley Sawyer. This is yet another reminder that the internet is forever, and sometimes your past can come back to haunt you and even get you fired. After some of his highly offensive tweets came to light in 2020, actor Hartley Sawyer was fired from his role as Ralph Dibny on the CW show The Flash. This all happened around the height of the Black Lives Matter movement, and so in a show of accountability and respect to those he offended, the showrunners released a statement informing fans of the show of their decision to let Hartley go, where they said, quote, "In regards to Mr. Sawyer's posts on social media, we do not tolerate derogatory remarks that target any race, ethnicity, national origin, gender, or sexual orientation. Such remarks are anti-ethical to our values and policies, which strive and evolve to promote a safe, inclusive, and productive environment for our workplace." End quote. Since being fired, Hartley hasn't been around on social media or anywhere in the news. After being exposed like this, I'm guessing he's trying to lay low while The Flash continues on without him or his character. At number 2, Lori Loughlin. Actress Lori Loughlin not only lost a lot of money in legal fees, but she also lost her job on the Netflix Full House reboot, Fuller House. This all came after she was indicted on charges of conspiracy to commit wire and mail fraud after being caught in the college admissions scandal. After she and her husband Massimo pleaded guilty to the charges against them, they were sentenced to 2 and 5 months respectively, and though everything is said and done for them legally speaking, Lori is still out of a job and probably will be hard-pressed to find much work. As a result of this whole scandal, Lori was fired from Fuller House, and there have also been reports that she's been blacklisted from Hollywood. Whether those reports are actually true remains unknown, but the bottom line is her career is tarnished and so is her credibility. This all happened because the actress and her husband bribed their daughter into a good college, and so many people have pointed out how their wrongful use of their privilege is really what led them here. And finally at number 1, Lea Michele. TV and Broadway actress Lea Michele was cancelled in 2020 after a bunch of people came forward to expose her for her awful on-set behavior. Reports and accusations came out last summer detailing how she's been known to disrespect people she's worked with in the industry. This all started at the height of the Black Lives Matter movement, where one of Lea's Glee co-stars, Samantha Ware, called Lea out on how the actress made her time on the show a quote, living hell. This ultimately sparked a chain reaction of other people coming forward to talk about their horror stories of working with the actress, with some talking about how she would disrespect and talk down to background actors, how she would delay production, and how she would refuse to talk to anyone face to face and would force them to speak with her assistant instead. Because of all the negative attention Lea was getting, this ultimately led her to being fired by the brand HelloFresh, ending their partnership with the actress. They released a statement condemning the actress's actions, and since then, Lea has lost credibility and respect in Hollywood.
Number 10, Lindsay Lohan. In the early 2000s, Lindsay Lohan faced a ton of public scandals, but one that's not talked about often enough actually took place behind the scenes of a little show called Ugly Betty. Lohan was a guest star on the show in the 3rd season playing Kimmy Keegan. Kimmy was supposed to stick around for 6 total episodes, but that number was shrunken down to just 4. The reason being was her co-star and, the lead of the show, America Ferrera, just didn't get along with Lindsay on set. According to America and several of the Ugly Betty crew members, Lindsay would just show up with an entourage of people, usually under the influence of herbs and spices, and the production crew had to repaint her dressing room when she left because it was just so messed up. One crew member alleged that she would cut images of her own face out of magazines and tabloid articles as if she were making a collage of some kind. America claims that one scene took over 30 takes to get right because they just kept flubbing their lines. Lindsay's team of buddies have been adamant that America had too much power and was the sole reason that she was asked to leave the show. Unfortunately, if you do bad things, and enough people know about it, karma comes around. Number 9, Julianne Moore. Creative differences, the phrase that has been behind some of the most tragic Hollywood stories in films that could have been, and in this case, roles. For an industry centered around creativity, the movie industry can be awfully risk-averse, especially when it comes to the decision of casting a lead. Now, it's not uncommon for actors to suddenly be thrust out of productions in lieu of a new face, or in some cases, the original choice that you were replacing. A good example of doing it yourself, though, is Julianne Moore. The actor from films like the 2013 reboot of Carrie and the action flick Kingsman: Golden Circle was set to play the leading lady in the critically acclaimed dramedy Can You Ever Forgive Me? And she was casted as the character Lee Israel, a writer who falls out of step with current culture and decides to embellish her writing, basically inventing the concept of fake news. Julianne began filming her scenes, but was asked to leave the production only 1 month into filming. According to the director Nicole Holofner, portrayal of her character just wasn't what she had in mind while writing. Julianne played the role with too much of herself influencing the overall appeal. When directed to try to play the role another way, Julianne continued to give a similar performance, and she was ultimately replaced by Melissa McCarthy, better known for her more comedic roles in movies like The Heat and Bridesmaids, but her turn as Lee is considered to be one of her greatest acting achievements of all time, even landing her a nomination for Best Actress at the 2019 Oscar ceremony. Julianne didn't take the news all that well, but did eventually move on and has made a couple of solid flicks since, so it all worked out in the end for everybody. Number 8, Henry Winkler. Henry Winkler is best known for his role as the Fonz on Happy Days, and he was set to direct Tom Hanks in the much-loved buddy cop movie Turner and Hooch. Unfortunately, these two had a pretty rough history together before that. The Fonz had actually fought with Hanks in character on the set of Happy Days for an episode a few years before, and it would appear that Tom wishes that he could fight Henry for real. As rumor has it, the two of them just didn't get along at all, so much so that a few days into filming Turner and Hooch, with Henry behind the wheel, Tom ordered Winkler to be removed from the set and replaced as director. That's the kind of power Tom Hanks wields. He can just walk on set and be like, no. Not only did Tom complain that Henry's behavior as director was annoying, he complained that Henry was just overall bad at his job. It would take double the average time to reset a shot on set, he had minimal control over his actors, and he was apparently very frustrated with having a dog on the set. Like, did he even read the script before he took the job? That dog is a national treasure. What makes this firing even more tragic is the fact that when Winkler was delivered the news, one of the film's producers ripped Henry's contract up in front of his face. Over the years, when asked about the incident, Henry denies that he's ever had any kind of personal or professional issues with Tom Hanks. Tom's never given us any reason to think that he would lie about something like that. What would he have to gain? I defeated the Fonz. Hey, so did ABC when they canceled his show. Number 7, Jean-Claude Van Damme. The Belgian actor Jean-Claude Van Damme was just on the verge of coming into his own career as the Muscles from Brussels when he landed a job opposite of Arnold Schwarzenegger in 1987's action flick Predator. Now, this sounded like the perfect casting choice, right? Jean would have worked alongside the likes of Carl Weathers and Jesse Ventura, and while that may have turned out cool, the reality was that John wasn't casted to play a role as one of the Marines at all. Instead, he was casted to play the titular Predator himself. The special effects artists behind the project called the experience with John as a hilarious comedy of errors, in which nobody knew exactly what the other was expecting. Apparently, nobody had informed Jean that the role was basically just a glorified stuntman. They were prepared to direct him to just hop around like a frog, but John was obviously confused and upset with this choice. According to John, he had just gotten off the boat, and he was under the impression that he was going to be showcasing his martial arts skills to the world, but was instead reduced to a massive, slow-moving alien with dreadlocks. To the surprise of absolutely nobody, Van Damme was furious and dispirited about spending this entire movie coked up in a clunky and often ridiculous-looking suit, and was ultimately fired and replaced with Kevin Peter Hall. The idea that he was just on set like, I can barely move in this thing, just brings me so much joy. Number 6, Shia LaBeouf. In 2013, Alec Baldwin was attached to star in a Broadway production of the show Orphans alongside Transformers alumni Shia LaBeouf. Now, from day one of rehearsal, Shia and Baldwin were at each other's throats. Shia's problem was that Alec was not off script. This was something that he considered to be very unprofessional. Shia has since claimed that he was so nervous about the show that he made sure to memorize his lines before he even set foot on the stage. His methods were not reciprocated by Alec, who simply showed up with a coffee in one hand and a script in the other one, planning to rehearse in the moment. Shia was furious and apparently yelled at Alec to learn his lines right now. He was the lead. That's the deal. After a couple of weeks and one particularly rough day where Shia blew up at him in front of a ton of cast and crew, Alec took 5 and had a meeting with the producers. He said that if Shia wasn't let go, that he was gonna quit. Well, producers caved and Shia was let go. In the tabloid, they claimed creative differences, but Shia later shared his side, clearly upset with being dropped as if he meant nothing to the show. Number 5, Dennis Hopper. Dennis Hopper is one of the groundbreaking actors and directors of the 1960s and 70s New Hollywood, now eventually finding his niche in the early 90s, playing villains in films like Speed, Waterworld, and the live-action Mario movie where he plays Bowser. Yes, that exists. No, it's not good. So it came as no surprise when he was casted to play Christoph, the all-powerful TV producer controlling Truman Burbank's life in the film The Truman Show. The cast was stacked and it included Hollywood heavyweight Jim Carrey as the titular Truman. Anyone with a brain cell would have been excited to be a part of this movie, still considered to be one of Jim's best dramatic performances. However, 2 days into filming his scenes for Christoph, which were only supposed to take 10 days to film, Hopper was unceremoniously let go from the set. Apparently, Dennis had a contract in place with producer Scott Rudin that he would be fired should his work be unsatisfactory. He must have been pretty bad in the role, as the director Peter Weir has been described as extremely reluctant to ever remove an actor from a movie. Reports later surfaced that Hopper was basically half asleep while playing the character, and while Christoph wasn't written to be, a manic madman, he did require just a little bit of effort to be properly portrayed. Ultimately, Ed Harris stepped in to play the role after production had been desperately trying to replace Dennis to avoid having this film be shut down entirely. Thankfully, that never happened, and The Truman Show has gone on to be one of the most depressingly heartfelt films Jim Carrey has ever made. Oh, and Ed actually got nominated for an Oscar, so sorry Dennis, looks like they made a good move. Number 4, Eric Stoltz. Alright, here, let's talk about a little bit of the 1985 comedy sci-fi Back to the Future. I loved this movie growing up. The story followed Marty McFly, a high school student who's accidentally sent back to 1955 in a DeLorean invented by his close friend and scientist Dr. Emmett Brown, played by Christopher Lloyd. And no, we're not going to talk about that friendship, even though it's a little strange. And they're forced to get his future parents together before he disappears from existence. Now, whoever pitched this movie must have been lacking some sleep. The film went on to spawn 2 sequels, creating what's considered to be one of the greatest film trilogies of all time. And while Michael J. Fox may have played the iconic Marty McFly, he actually wasn't the first actor to put on that puffy vest. A young man named Eric Stoltz was initially casted to play the role. You may not recognize Eric because his most famous character was drenched in prosthetics and makeup, playing the character of Roy L. Dennis in the film Mask, a man with severe facial and skull deformities. He was nearly halfway through shooting this movie when the news came that he was going to be replaced by Michael J. Fox. Fox was the director Robert Zemeckis' first choice, but he was initially unable to sign on to the project because of his prior commitments to the show Family Ties. Eventually though, the two studios were able to find a way to make it work and allowed him to film both projects. This is why you may notice that a majority of Marty's scenes that take place outside are at night, because it was the only time that he could film for like 60% of this movie. Robert wanted Eric out from the very beginning though, because his portrayal of the character was just too intense, a lot more intense than the writers had in mind, not to mention Eric read the end of the movie as a tragedy instead of a happy ending. Spoiler alert for a movie that's like 40 years old. At the end of the first film, Marty returns to 1985 after successfully getting his parents together, but instead of being poor and depressed, the family is thriving and successful, and somehow Eric took that as Marty being an outsider in a world he didn't know. But just like, look at the truck he has parked in his garage, like nothing tragic about that. His intensity combined with his depressing performance of the finale got him kicked off of the film only minutes after Fox was available. Number 3, Alyssa Milano. Alright, let's talk about the show Charmed, a solid series that was on the air for 10 years. The series followed 3 sisters that discover they are descendants of a line of good female witches and are destined to fight against the forces of evil. Yeah, it was a fun show. However, just because you play sisters on set doesn't mean that you're gonna be close in real life. Rose McGowan and Alyssa Milano had a very public altercation that resulted in a little incident on set being shared with the world. Rose claimed that Alyssa threw a fit in front of the crew, yelling that they didn't pay her enough to do the things she was doing, only she didn't say things she was doing. She said a bad word. She called Alyssa's behavior appalling, claiming that she cried every time the show got renewed for another season because it meant more time on a toxic set. Alyssa never shared her own comments on the situation and was eventually let go from the show, confirming what she was being accused of. Number 2, Thomas Gibson. Thomas made a name for himself starring as one of the leads of the series Criminal Minds. He was on the show for a few years, and in that time he made a few problems for the people unfortunate enough to be staff members of the series. There were a few issues over the years that would have warranted some action, like screaming at producers and writers for not doing a good job, but the incident that got him kicked off the show for good involved a kick. In 2016, Thomas was swiftly fired from the series after an incident with a writer named Virgil Williams. An internal investigation revealed that Thomas kicked Virgil one day during production of an episode that Gibson was directing. Now, as I've said before, that was not the first incident on set that really should have resulted in some kind of punishment. In 2013, he pleaded no contest to no-no juice related reckless driving after being arrested under a DUI, and 3 years before that, he allegedly shoved an assistant director, Ian Wolfe, during a late-night location scene. That led to the studio ordering Gibson to take 8 hours of anger management, which clearly worked out. According to most of the people on set though, Thomas was a wild card. Some days he'd be friendly and accommodating, and the next, nuts. And at number 1, Richard Gere. Richard Gere is one of those actors that doesn't really act. You know, sometimes people just get hired for films because they have a face for it or a style. For Richard Gere, he did not have enough class and moxie to keep a handle on his role in the film The Lords of the Flatbush. Now, he was cast as star alongside Rocky Balboa, Sylvester Stallone, and according to Sly, these two just didn't get along. Their beef was strong and long-lasting throughout production until it finally came to a head when one day Richard was just a little bit too into one scene and grabbed Sylvester aggressively by his collar. When Sly told him to lay off, he laid in instead. Now, the scene was being filmed on Coney Island, and when the actors took a minute to take a break, they tried to break each other. Sly was eating a hot dog alone in his car. Sounds peaceful, right? Well, then suddenly Richard came in and joined him with half of a chicken dripping in mustard. Despite Sly's warning about the mustard, it dripped all over his pants, and in true Rocky fashion, he elbowed Richard in the face and threw him out of his car. The altercation resulted in Richard being fired from the project. Oh no! We have to decide between Richard Gere and Sylvester Stallone. I wonder how quick that decision was. Number 10, Rose McGowan. So let's talk about the show Charmed for a second, a solid series that was on air for basically 10 years. The series followed 3 sisters that discover they are descendants of a long line of good female witches and are destined to fight against the forces of evil. Yes, it was a very fun show, however, just because you play sisters on set does not mean that you're always going to be close in real life. Rose McGowan and Alyssa Milano had a very public altercation that resulted resulted in a little incident on set being shared with the world. Rose claimed that Alyssa threw a fit in front of the crew, yelling, "They don't pay me enough to do this stuff," only she didn't say stuff. She called Alyssa's behavior appalling, claiming she cried every time that the show got renewed for another season because it just meant more time on a toxic set. Alyssa never shared her comments on the situation, confirming what she was being accused of. Number 9. Richard Gere. Richard Gere is one of those actors that doesn't really act. Sometimes people just get hired for films because they have a face for it or the style. For Richard, he did not have enough class and moxie to keep a handle on his role in the film Lords of the Flatbush. He was casted to star along Rocky himself, Sylvester Stallone, and according to Sly, the two didn't get along at all. Their beef was strong and long-lasting throughout the entire production until it finally came to a head one day when Richard was a bit too into one scene and he actually grabbed Sylvester pretty aggressively by the collar. When Sly told him to lay off, he laid in instead. The scene was being filmed on Coney Island, and when the actors took a minute to take a break, they tried to break each other. Sly was eating a hot dog alone in his car, which sounds pretty peaceful, and suddenly Richard stormed in, joined him with half of a chicken dripping in mustard, and despite his warnings about the mustard, seriously, it dripped all over his pants. In true Rocky fashion, he elbowed Richard in the face, threw him out of his car, and the altercation resulted in Richard being fired from the project. Oh no, they had to decide between Richard Gere and Rocky. I wonder how quick that decision was. Number 8. Selma Blair. It's funny that this entry involves Charlie Sheen getting a woman fired when he himself has been fired from so many projects because of, well, several reasons. After being fired from 2.5 Men, Sheen returned to the acting world, headlining his own show called Anger Management. It premiered in 2012 with cast featuring Hellboy alumni Selma Blair playing his colleague and friend with benefits on the show. However, Sheen's terrible behavior continued to haunt him from his 2.5 Men days. Blair was very vocal on her problems with Charlie, especially his messy work ethic. Charlie heard and he was having none of that, so he threatened to quit the show if Blair was going to remain a part of the cast. Sheen got his way and Blair was let go after starring in 54 episodes. The show didn't last long though. Who would have guessed that a messy actor being the lead was a bad idea? It got cancelled in 2014. Next up, 7. Shannen Doherty. Unfortunately for Shannen Doherty, she gained quite the reputation in Hollywood for being fired due to issues with her co-stars. She may or may not be making another appearance on this list. Who knows? Guess you'll have to stick around to find out. For the first entry, we're going to look back to the very popular series teen drama 90210, a series following the lives of the Walsh family as they moved from Minneapolis to Beverly Hills. Doherty played the character Brenda Walsh, with her character eventually befriending several students at Beverly Hills High, including Donna Martin, played by Tori Spelling. The series was a hit after its initial season, however, with increased popularity came massive egos. Doherty and Spelling started clashing on set constantly, adding additional drama to the production team that really just didn't need to be there. Considering Tori's father, Aaron Spelling, was the producer on the show, it's pretty simple to piece together what happened. Doherty claimed that she was officially let go for having a haircut that messed up the continuity of the show, but a wig could have fixed that, so better believe Tori Spelling told her papa to boot her from the series. Number 6. Edward Norton. As we all know, Edward Norton didn't last long as the Incredible Hulk in the MCU, only being in one movie in 2008. By the way, I've read some of the comments, and no, Edward Norton was not the first person to play the Hulk on screen. The honor goes to Lou Ferrigno and Bill Bixby from the original series, and don't you dare get me started on Eric Bana, looking like he's farting every time he turns into the Hulk. The 2008 film was a success, but not a massive box office goat. The studio were at odds and they wanted to keep using the Hulk and incorporate him into the Avengers, but Edward Norton was becoming increasingly difficult to work with. When he was contacted to keep playing the character, he demanded more money from the studio. However, he was already on thin ice following his time filming The Incredible Hulk. While not some wild on-set meltdown, Norton did make some pretty odd choices. For instance, as part of his contract, he was allowed to rewrite the script as much as he wanted, but it still needed to be approved. So he wrote new scripts over and over again until we got the 2008 Incredible Hulk movie with some of Ed's ideas baked into the final script. Kevin Feige claims that the choice to part ways with Ed was not based on money, but instead on Marvel just wishing to hire an actor that embodies the creative and collaboration side of their talented members. Essentially, he was like, Mark Ruffalo's nicer than you and he doesn't write his scripts, so bye-bye. This ended up being a great decision on both parts though, because Mark Ruffalo is fantastic as Bruce Banner and the Hulk, and Edward went on to make several high-quality films, including a few collaborations with Wes Anderson. Moonrise Kingdom would not have been the same without Edward Norton as Scoutmaster Ward. Number 5. Anne Hathaway. So a fun fact that I was unaware of until today, Anne Hathaway was almost a secondary lead in one of the most universally loved Seth Rogen movies of all time. Knocked Up from 2007 follows Seth Rogen and Katherine Heigl as they prepare for the arrival of an unplanned baby after a one-night stand. The cast was packed with stellar comedians like Paul Rudd, Jonah Hill, Leslie Mann, so many more, and the cast almost featured an up-and-coming actor at the time, Anne Hathaway. Anne is famous these days for roles in movies like Princess Diary, Interstellar, and Ocean's 8. These days, she's considered to be at the top of the A-list. In 2013, she even took home her first Oscar for Best Supporting Actress. Now, before this though, she actually agreed to be in Knocked Up because she thought the script was great and that Seth Rogen, is Seth Rogen. You work with him every chance you can. However, she eventually decided not to participate in the film after one issue with the script became cause for concern. The scene in question was one of the final moments in the film, which for those of you who have seen the movie know is pretty graphic. The birthing scene in Knocked Up ended up being a combination of Catherine acting and some close-up clips of her cookie. Anne read that part and decided that her first role in a major comedy movie should maybe be something else. Although it was confirmed that it was not going to be her bits and bobs on display, she has a no birthday suit clause. It worked out for everyone though, because Catherine did a great job despite hating the set apparently, and Anne Hathaway is one of the biggest movie stars to date, so good for her. Number 4, Dennis Hopper. Dennis Hopper is one of the groundbreaking actors and directors from the 1960s and 70s New Hollywood, eventually finding his niche in the early 90s, playing villains in movies like Speed, Waterworld, and the live-action Mario Brothers movie, where he plays Bowser. Yes, that exists. No, it's not good. So it came as no surprise when he was casted to play Kristoff, the all-powerful TV producer controlling Truman Burbank's life in the movie The Truman Show. The cast was incredible and included Hollywood heavyweight Jim Carrey as the titular Truman. Anyone with a brain cell would have been excited to be a part of this film, still considered to be one of his best dramatic performances. However, 2 days into filming his scenes for Kristoff, which were only expected to take about 10 days to film, Hopper was unceremoniously let go from the set. Apparently, Dennis had a contract in place with producer Scott Rudin that he would be fired should his work be unsatisfactory. He must have been pretty bad in the role, as the director Peter Weir has been described as extremely reluctant to ever remove an actor from a movie. Reports later surfaced that Hopper was basically half asleep while playing the character, and while Kristoff wasn't written to be like a manic man or anything, he did require some effort to be properly pulled off. Ultimately, Ed Harris stepped in to play the role after production had been desperately trying to replace Dennis to avoid having the film be shut down entirely. Thankfully, that never happened, and The Truman Show has gone on to be one of the most depressingly heartfelt Jim Carrey performances ever. Oh, and Ed actually got nominated for an Oscar, so sorry Dennis, looks like it was a good move. Number 3, Jean-Claude Van Damme. The Belgian actor Jean-Claude Van Damme was just on the verge of coming into his own career as the Muscles from Brussels when he landed a job opposite of Arnold Schwarzenegger in 1987's action flick Predator. This sounded like the perfect casting choice. Jean would have worked alongside the likes of Carl Weathers and Jesse Ventura. While this may have turned out cool, the reality was that Jean wasn't casted to play one of the Marines at all. Instead, he was casted to play the titular Predator himself. The special effects artists behind the project called the experience with Jean as a hilarious comedy of errors, in which no party knew exactly what the other was expecting. Apparently, nobody actually told him that the role was basically just a glorified stuntman. They were prepared to direct him to just hop around like a frog, but Jean was obviously confused and upset with that choice. According to him, he had just gotten off the boat and was under the impression that he was going to be showcasing his martial arts skills to the world, but instead he was reduced to a massive, slow-moving alien with dreadlocks. To the surprise of absolutely nobody, Van Damme was furious and dispirited about spending the entire movie cooped up in a clunky and often ridiculous-looking suit, and he was ultimately fired and replaced with Kevin Peter Hall. The idea that he was just on set being like, I can barely move in this thing, it makes me so happy. Number 2, Janet Hubert. Will Smith got his big break in the acting world thanks to the success of the sitcom Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. It's a show following Will as the titular prince, living with a wealthy family in Bel-Air surrounded by cousins, uncles, and of course Aunt Vivian. In season 1, Aunt Viv was played by a woman named Janet Hubert Witten, but as a lot of people know, she was recasted after an on-set feud with Will Smith went a little bit too far. According to Will, Janet viewed him as an antagonist in her life. She had been in the business for years, and suddenly Will Smith popped into her life, and she had a tinge of jealousy towards him because he got into town, got a gig. Well, hey, that's what happens when you're good. She was trying to convince the producers to give her character more screen time and allow her to breathe on camera, but they said no because it wasn't the Aunt Viv show. She fought back hard, but it was ultimately decided that she would be asked to sit out the rest of the series and was replaced by Daphne Maxwell Reid, who is Aunt Viv. Number 1, Thomas Gibson. Thomas made a name for himself, starring as one of the leads of the series Criminal Minds. He was on the show for a few years, and in that time he made quite a few problems for those unfortunate enough to be staff members of the series. There were a few issues over the years that would have warranted some action, like screaming at producers and writers for not doing a good job. But the incident that got him kicked off of the show for good involved, well, a kick. In 2016, Thomas was swiftly fired from the series after an incident with a writer named Virgil Williams. An internal investigation revealed that Thomas kicked Virgil one day during production of an episode that Gibson was actually directing. And as I said, this isn't the first incident on set that really should have resulted in some kind of punishment, because 3 years earlier, in 2013, he pleaded no contest to no juice related reckless driving after being arrested under suspicion of DUI, and 3 years before that, he allegedly shoved an assistant director, Ian Wolfe, during a late night location scene. That led to the studio ordering Gibson to take 8 hours of anger management. According to most people on the set, Thomas was a wild card. Some days he was friendly and accommodating, and the next he went ballistic.
Undeniably, Hollywood icon Mel Gibson has faced significant public relations challenges since his 2006 arrest for an alleged DUI. Gibson was reportedly recorded making anti-Semitic remarks during his arrest in Malibu, California, leading to widespread criticism. In response to the controversy, Gibson sought rehabilitation and expressed deep remorse for his actions. But despite these efforts, many speculated his career was irreparably damaged. His reputation suffered another blow in 2010 when he was allegedly recorded using racist language by his then partner, Oksana Grigorieva. Following the leak, Gibson faced condemnation from civil rights and anti-domestic violence organizations. However, rumors of a career resurgence began to circulate. In 2017, Gibson reappeared at the Oscars as a nominee for Best Director. Even though his name was initially omitted from the Hacksaw Ridge movie poster, later the Hollywood Reporter revealed Gibson's plans to co-write and direct a remake of The Wild Bunch and a sequel to Passion of the Christ in 2020. Despite these controversies surrounding Gibson, there is no denying his talent and success in the film industry. As an actor, director, and producer, he's played a significant role in some of cinema's most iconic films such as Braveheart, Lethal Weapon, and Mad Max. On to the next! In 2007, a notorious video emerged featuring former Baywatch actor David Hasselhoff indulging in a cheeseburger, seemingly under the influence. Hasselhoff admitted to being a recovering alcoholic in a statement and explained, as quoted by The Hollywood Reporter, that the video was recorded by his daughters as a wake-up call. Although the incident haunted Hasselhoff for years, he chose to see the lighter side of it. In a conversation with Inside Edition, he stated that his daughters found humor in the situation. In 2015, Hasselhoff decided to poke fun at the incident in his mockumentary show Hoff the Record. His subsequent works include the 2016 film Baywatch, along with The Rock, and online show named Being David Hasselhoff. Despite his successful career and popularity, David faced a major career setback when he was fired from the popular reality show America's Got Talent. Hasselhoff, who had been a judge on the show since its inception in 2006, was reportedly let go due to concerns about his erratic behavior, possibly fueled by his publicly acknowledged struggles with alcoholism. The news of his departure was initially met with surprise and disappointment by fans who had come to appreciate his unique humor and candid critiques on the show. Next up, in the midst of the 2016 US presidential race, a shocking audio recording came to light, capturing a private conversation between then-candidate Donald Trump and TV host Billy Bush from the program Access Hollywood. On the recording, Trump controversially declared, "When you're a star, you can do anything," to which Bush seemingly concurred, responding, "Whatever you want." Trump's vulgar comments continued, including an explicit phrase about women, which was met with laughter, and tasteless remarks about women's legs by Bush. Despite the scandal, Trump went on to win the presidency, dismissing his words as mere locker room talk. Conversely, Bush faced immediate repercussions, losing his position on the Today Show. In a piece for the New York Times, Bush admitted that he didn't take Trump's words seriously at the time, perceiving them as an off-color jest. He wrote he was performing, surely he thought. None of this was real. Now we know better. Bush withdrew from public view for 3 years, sharing with People magazine how he felt completely apart and struggled with resentment and anger. However, he eventually returned to the public eye in 2019, speaking candidly about his mistakes and the lessons he learned from the experience. He admitted that he should have taken a stand and condemned Trump's behavior rather than simply going along with it. That incident sparked a larger conversation about toxic masculinity and misogyny in our society. It highlighted the prevalence of locker room talk and the normalization of objectifying objectifying women. It also shed light on the unequal treatment of men and women in similar situations. While Trump faced little consequence, Bush's career was severely impacted. Now we're diving into a major controversy that rocked the world of basketball. Remember Donald Sterling, the previous owner of LA Clippers? Well, in 2014, he made some comments that cost him a lot. A tape was leaked, allegedly recorded by V. Stiviano, his rumored girlfriend, where Sterling reportedly instructed her to refrain from posting pictures with people of color on Instagram. He was quoted saying, "You can sleep with black men, bring them in, do whatever you want. All I ask is you don't promote it and don't bring them to my games." I mean, as we can all, I'm sure, assume, this led to a wave of backlash, with his team members protesting by wearing their warm-up tees out inside out, effectively hiding the team's logo. The Clippers lost numerous sponsorships, and Sterling faced strong criticism from several notable figures in the African American community, including President Barack Obama. Obama remarked, "When ignorant folks want to advertise their ignorance, you don't really have to do anything, just let them talk." That's what happened here. He expressed his faith in NBA Commissioner Adam Silver that he would handle that situation. The fallout from Sterling's comments was immense. He was forced to sell the LA Clippers for $2 billion, endured a fine of $2.5 million, and was banned for life from the NBA. As of 2017, Sterling and his wife were trying to reverse the ban. In 2016, Michael Richards, also recognized as Kramer from the hit TV show Seinfeld, was performing at the Laugh Factory when he was heckled by an audience member who happened to be of African American descent. What transpired next shocked everyone present. According to TMZ, Richards lost his cool, responding with a racially charged outburst that lasted 3 minutes, in which he shouted, "Throw him out. Look, there's a..." Richards later made a public apology on The Late Show with David Letterman, expressing remorse for his uncontrolled outburst on stage and assuring everyone he was not a racist. Sounds like something a racist would say. The incident had a significant impact on Richards, who has since then kept a low profile. Reflecting on the incident years later on Jerry Seinfeld's Comedians in Cars with Coffee, Richards expressed regret over his behavior, acknowledging that he should have stayed focused on entertaining the audience rather than lashing out in anger. He admitted, "I think I worked selfishly and not selflessly. It's not about me, it's about the audience. Now that's a lesson I learned 7 years ago when I blew it in the comedy club and lost my temper." In the years following the incident, Richards has largely stayed out of the public eye, as he should. Next up, Transformers star Shia LaBeouf is no stranger to encounters with the law, but one incident in particular came at an extraordinary cost. LaBeouf's 2017 arrest in Savannah, Georgia for disorderly conduct and public intoxication brought him significant attention when a video of him hurling abuses at a police officer went viral. This resulted in a court-ordered 10-week rehab stint. The following year, in an interview with Esquire, he revealed that a series of arrests, erratic public behavior, and personal issues related to PTSD had left him marginalized in Hollywood. He said, "I'm run out. No one's giving me a shot right now." Despite these setbacks, LaBeouf remained steadfast in his determination to revive his career. His co-star from The Peanut Butter Falcon, Zachary Goetz-Sagan, was instrumental in this journey. LaBeouf recounts a conversation where Zachary, who has Down syndrome, told him, "You're already famous, this is my chance and you're ruining it." Reflecting on this, LaBeouf admitted, "To hear him say that he was disappointed in me probably changed the course of my life." He praised Goetz-Sagan's honesty, saying, "Zach can't not shoot straight and bless him for it, cause in that moment I needed a straight shooter who I couldn't argue with." LaBeouf's performance in The Peanut Butter Falcon received critical acclaim, with critics labeling it as his comeback role. Next, the golfing legend Tiger Woods found himself in the spotlight back in 2009, and not for his golf prowess, but for a scandal involving his marital life. It was reported that Ellen Nordegren, Woods' wife at the time, chased him out of their home with a golf club upon discovering his infidelity. In a leaked voicemail that emerged shortly after, Woods could be heard pleading with the woman, as reported by the New York Post, to remove her name from her phone. This was seemingly an attempt to prevent Nordegren from contacting her. Following the scandal, Woods confessed to having extramarital affairs with roughly 120 women. The fallout was immense, leading to a divorce from Nordegren, a drastic decline in his golf performance, and the loss of significant endorsements, among them Nike. Woods later sought treatment for sex addiction. 10 years would pass before Woods would clinch another major championship, winning the Masters in 2019. Tiger Woods is widely recognized as one of the greatest golfers in history, with numerous major championship wins under his belt. However, his reputation took a hit with that infidelity news. The scandal rocked the sports world and brought attention to the issue of extramarital affairs among athletes. In 1998, a huge controversy swept the nation when Monica Lewinsky, former former White House intern, found herself at the heart of a scandal. Her ex-friend Linda Tripp had secretly recorded their private calls and handed these tapes over to the FBI. These recordings suggested that Lewinsky had been involved in an affair with the then President Bill Clinton, sparking a media storm that left a lasting impact on Lewinsky's career, but obviously not Clinton's. Christian Bale, the renowned actor, found himself in a precarious situation during the filming of Terminator Salvation. A leaked recording captured him in a heated argument with the film's director of photography, who had unintentionally intruded on a scene. Bale lost in a tirade of expletives, demanded the DP to be dismissed from the set. Following the leak, the actor issued a public apology on LA's K-Rock radio station, admitting his behavior was unjustifiable and acknowledging that he had behaved poorly. Bale explained that his outburst resulted from being deeply committed to his character, having blurred the lines between reality and fiction. However, his sister expressed concern about his behavior, referencing a previous incident where he had a similar outburst in front of her family. While Bale continues to feature in critically acclaimed films, such incidents have raised eyebrows and led to speculation about his future in the industry. Okay, in an episode of her podcast, Broad Ideas, Rachel shares a deeply personal story about a recent professional setback she faced. She opens up about a peculiar circumstance where her candid conversation about her private life, specifically aspects of her sex life, led to an unexpected job loss. Surprisingly, this open and honest dialogue about sex resulted in her losing a job she had already secured. She described that as the first time she encountered such a situation in her professional career.
At number 10, we have Thinking Kate Hudson Won an Oscar. In the world of Hollywood, winning an Oscar is one of the biggest career-changing moments. So when ABC reporter George Penicino said, "Kate, you know what it's like to win an Oscar?" to which she was uncomfortable and replied, I've never won an Oscar. For some background information, Kate Hudson starred in movies like Glass Onion, Mother's Day with Jennifer Aniston, as well as How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. So I can understand why he thought she would have won. But when you're an interviewer, it's important to have a base of knowledge on the people who are going to be there, so as to not embarrass yourself. And this was no exception. Thankfully for George, he wasn't fired because of his little live television slip-up, but it's safe to say that he has learned his lesson about making assumptions.
Number 9. Zac Efron's Love Tubes. Zac rose to fame as a Disney darling, playing the leading role of Troy Bolton in the popular High School Musical series. Since his Disney days, Zac has lent his face and voice to several projects over the years, but the red carpet event that we're talking about today was for the animated Dr. Seuss movie, The Lorax. Zac, who voiced the main character of the film, was walking the red carpet when he suddenly handed his assistant something in his pocket. As he handed them the product, something fell out of his pocket and onto the ground. That something is a word that I can't say online, so let's just call them love tubes. Zac's love tube wrapper was flat on the carpet right there for the world to see. He quickly picked it up, but the damage was already done. In the first interview following this incident, the interviewer asked Zac if anything unplanned had happened to him recently, and he then explained that it was a complete accident, that there was no pre-show pocket check, anything that could have prevented it. Well, Illumination didn't like that excuse, and they also didn't like their main star being associated with such an adult product. So when the plans for a Lorax sequel were brought to the studios, Zac's name was left out and replaced by another star. I guess whoever they picked wasn't famous enough because the project was ultimately shelved by the studio, and Zac was able to find work somewhere else. In Baywatch.
At number 8, we have Jim Carrey's existential rant. Jim Carrey is a character who has had many varying roles. From the Grinch in the iconic live-action version of How the Grinch Stole Christmas, he was in The Cable Guy with Matthew Broderick, and he most recently played Dr. Eggman in the live-action Sonic the Hedgehog movies. His IMDb spans on and on, but something important to know about him is that he had really bad depression, and really let himself go over the years. One of those moments, we really saw how the mind of a genius works was when he was on a rant during an interview at the 2017 Harper's Bazaar Icons party. No one really knew why he showed up in the first place if he was so unhappy to be there, but former E! reporter Kat Sadler came up to him to ask him questions. He leaned into the mic and he said, "There is no meaning to any of this." When she asked why he was attending the party, he said that he wanted to find the most meaningless thing he could come to and join, and there he was. Sadler tried to pry about other things and what the term icon meant to him, but he continued to spew existential nonsense that made everyone uncomfortable aside from him. It may not have been gross, but his career did begin to decline, both before and after this.
If there is one thing that should be known about Taylor Swift, is that she can end entire careers with one conversation. In 2015, Taylor was on the red carpet for the Grammy Awards when she was interviewed by Entertainment Tonight. The woman who interviewed her started the interview by asking her cameraman to pan up and down, literally checking Taylor out with this massive camera. It's not weird at all. After going along with the bit for a moment and telling the camera about her dress, the interviewer said that she honestly just wanted a shot of Taylor's legs because, as she said before, Taylor is going to be going home with more than a trophy. Maybe a man. Well, Taylor didn't appreciate that comment or the assumption. She did not laugh and then proceeded to tell the interviewer that she would be going home with no men, just hanging out with friends, maybe some of her cats. While the majority of the interview went well, the interviewers were reprimanded behind the scenes by Taylor herself. The news of Taylor's dislike for the interviewers made its way up to the top, where the ET executives decided to keep them off of the red carpet for a while. Remember, keep your creepy camera gestures to yourself, lady.
At number 6, we have David Letterman with Jennifer Aniston. David Letterman used to be the host of The Tonight Show before Jimmy Fallon took over. He's also a comedian who was successful for many years, and some comedians can take a sketch too far, or commit to a bit that makes people uncomfortable. And that's exactly what happened to a young Jennifer Aniston while on the show with him. They were making conversation, as one does, but then he got up and tried to eat her hair. I understand that you can really like someone as an actor, but when you are actively trying to eat their hair on live television, that is just too far. However, like the true professional she is, she let him. And there are photos out there of David Letterman leaning over Miss Aniston with her hair in his mouth.
Number 5, John Mayer. John may be known for spending time with the ladies, but it's not all peaches and cream. The musician was doing an interview with Playboy magazine in 2010. Now I know it involves Playboy, who are notoriously provocative, but even they thought this interview was just a bit much. John gets into some pretty graphic depictions of things that he wanted to do to Jessica Simpson, using language that cannot be repeated online. But he then ventures off the physical intimacy thing and instead begins to speak about his, and I quote, hood pass, claiming that he had become so popular among black people that he could get away with anything he wanted, and he then called it the N-word pass. Yeah, not a great moment for this guy. Following the interview, fans were beyond upset at his behavior and his attitude towards women and honestly just people in general. Many turned on John, making a massive dent in his career, rightfully so, and nowadays this is one of the only things that he is remembered for. Well, that and his really bad cameo in Get Hard.
At number 4, we have Jay Leno questioning Kanye West. Jay Leno was the host of yet another late night show, and back in 2009, he had Kanye West on his show. You see, the event that caused this was Kanye West interrupting young Taylor Swift's mid-acceptance speech for the best music video, I might add, to say that Beyonce had the best music video and should have won, in front of an audience on TV. For some context, Kanye's mother had passed away in 2007, just a couple years prior to the incident. Jay Leno knew this, and he said that he was fortunate enough to have met his mother. So, Leno, in a very disrespectful fashion, asked Kanye if his mother would have been disappointed in him for doing that, and asked if she would have lectured him. You can see how shocked he is and how hurt he is hearing those words. He almost had no response. Whether or not you're a fan of him, that was still so unprofessional and cruel.
Number 3, Amy Schumer. In the mid-2010s, comedian Amy Schumer was named one of Time magazine's top 100 most influential people and was made to attend a red carpet event to celebrate with her fellow influencers. 2 of them were Kanye West and Kim Kardashian. While discussing the incident on the Graham Norton show, Amy revealed that there was a planned prank on Kim and Ye. Her goal was to get them to crack a smile and get some good fun pics from this event, but Kim and Kanye did not find this situation funny and continued to walk past her as she fell in front of them in a dramatic fashion. The best picture is just Kim staring at Amy for a moment being like, okay, and then just moving on. While the moment was meant to create a fun scene, it instead made Amy look like she had some kind of grudge against Kim and Kanye. While not an interview, the incident on the red carpet forced Comedy Central to postpone a season of her show until things were sorted out with Kim. Well, it turned out that not only did Kim not care about this, but she did end up finding the entire thing funny. With the two apparently now being close friends, Amy even made a cameo on Kim's new reality series, The Kardashians.
At number 2, we have the Marvel interview. I use such a vague title because there is a lot to unpack about this interview with Robert Downey Jr. He had a very rocky upbringing, and he was involved in a lot of illegal activities, had substance issues, and has an internet-famous mugshot. But he's been clean for years, all thanks to his wife. So when the man doing the interview for a Marvel movie pressed about his past, it made him very uncomfortable. And it wasn't just asking some surface level questions, he asked about his relationship with his father and mentioned how he has opened up about his issues with liquids and substances in his upbringing. He then went on to ask RDJ if he really thought he was free from all that, or something you think about. This was when RDJ cut him off, left the room, and walked away from the interview. Imagine the audacity the interviewer must have had to even think about asking Robert such a thing, and even though he had been clean for so long and had finally gained the confidence to speak up about it.
And at number 1, Will Smith. That's right, Will Smith is on this list for slapping someone, but it's not Chris Rock. Today we're talking about an incident on the red carpet that left one paparazzo with a massive red mark on their face and a fired stamp on their forehead. Will was walking the red carpet in 2013 giving people interviews when a Ukrainian comedian named Vitaly Sejik approached him, a man who is unfortunately world famous for being an absolutely terrible person, especially towards celebrities. He pretended to be a reporter and started interviewing Will Smith, but then he suddenly pulls Will towards him and tries to kiss him on his cheeks and his mouth. Well, Will obviously shoves him back and gave him a little, "Hey bud, no thank ya," just a little backhand to the face. A team of security following Mr. Smith picked this guy up and carried him away like the toddler he was. Who knew Will was practicing for his Oscar slap all the way back then? Sejik was finally reprimanded for his actions and was actually made to pay a hefty fine for attempting to force himself on Will Smith. Needless to say, that guy works for himself now. Number 10, Zac Efron. Zac rose to fame as a Disney darling, playing the leading role of Troy Bolton in the popular High School Musical series. Since his Disney days, Zac has lent his face and voice to several projects. But the red carpet event that we're talking about today was for the animated Dr. Seuss movie The Lorax, which Zac, who voiced the main character of the film, was walking the red carpet when he suddenly handed his assistant something from his pocket. As he handed them the product, something fell out of his pocket and onto the carpet. Now that something is a word that I can't say online. Let's just call them love tubes. Love tubes. I like that. Zac's love tube wrapper was flat on the carpet right there for the world to see. He quickly picked it up, but the damage had already been done. In the first interview following this incident, the interviewer asked Zac if there was anything unplanned that had happened. He then explained that this was a complete accident. There was no pre-show pocket check or anything that could have prevented it. Well, Illumination did not like that excuse, and they also didn't like their main star being associated with such an adult product. So, when the plans for a Lorax sequel were brought to the studios, Zac's name was left out and replaced by somebody else. I guess whoever they picked wasn't famous enough though, as the project was ultimately shelved by the studio, and thankfully Zac found work somewhere else. In Baywatch. Number 9, Taylor Swift. If there is one thing that should be known about Taylor Swift, it's that she can end an entire career with one single conversation. In 2015, Taylor was on the red carpet for the Grammy Awards when she was interviewed by a woman from Entertainment Tonight. The interviewer started the interview by asking her cameraman to pan up and down and literally checking her out as this massive camera just followed her. You know, that's not weird at all. After going along with the bit for a bit and telling the camera about her dress, the woman who was interviewing her said that she honestly just wanted a shot of Taylor's legs because she said before the show that Taylor is going to be going home with more than a trophy. Maybe a man. Ooh. Taylor didn't appreciate that comment or that assumption. She did not laugh and proceeded to tell her that she would be going home with no men, just hanging out with her friends and then home to her cats. While the majority of the interview went well, the interviewers were reprimanded behind the scenes by Taylor herself. The news of Taylor's dislike for them made its way up to the top, where the ET executives decided to keep him off the red carpet from now on. Keep your creepy camera gestures to yourself, lady. Number 8. Rachel Zegler. Rachel Zegler's comments about the upcoming live-action Snow White remake could have a huge impact on ticket sales, according to brand experts. The 22-year-old actress has received plenty of backlash after she admitted that she hated the original 1937 movie and branded the storyline as weird, while referring to the Prince character as a straight-up stalker. The backlash occurred after several videos of Rachel speaking negatively about the original film in various interviews last year resurfacing online, where when she spoke about her version of the character, she said that she is not going to be saved by the prince and that she is not going to be dreaming about true love. As well as being labeled a fake feminist, some critics have accused Rachel of gaslighting, and one marketing consultant has warned that Disney will need to be very careful with how they have portrayed Snow White. Snow White has already been suffering from lots of backlash well before Rachel made her comments. Peter Dinklage spoke out about Disney not using true dwarf actors for the new film, instead opting to use heavy CGI on Hollywood elites. Rachel's role as Snow White is in the air as of filming this video, because thanks to her comments, the studio is rethinking the situation. While the film is set to release in March of next year, the writer's strike may be the exact moment that the studio needs to recast and rewrite its oldest character. Number 7. Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey is known for his hilarious personality on and off screen, but he gave Kat Sadler from E! News and Daily Pop a very awkward interview on the red carpet at Harper Bazaar's party in 2017. The interaction started with Jim slowly circling Kat as she attempts to express her confusion and excitement. Jim Carrey was at a Fashion Week event. Was the man known for being an incredible artist, bringing his talent to the fashion world? No, he was just really mad about stuff. By 2017, Jim had made a name for himself as an oddly serious man who tended to venture into the realm of energies and universal concepts when getting into deep conversations. He started the conversation with, "This is meaningless." And then he continued to say that he wanted to find the most meaningless thing that he could attend that evening. The event was a celebration of icons and celebrities, according to Kat, to which Jim said he did not agree, as in he didn't agree with the concept of icons. He continued to give a small speech about not believing that people truly exist, and that we are all just a field of energy, and that peace lies beyond personality, man. The entire time this interview is taking place, Kat is visibly uncomfortable, just counting down to the moment that Jim says something funny or even remotely related to fashion. Instead, he just shares his thoughts, tells her that she has a nice fragrance, and walks away. While Jim's career had already started to slow down at that point, the clip became viral and studios were wondering if he was going to be a good fit for anything anymore. Many scripts with his name on them were rewritten or simply just kept to themselves, right up until 2020 when he made a small comeback in the surprisingly fun Sonic the Hedgehog movie. Number 6. Will Smith. That's right, Will Smith is on this list for hitting somebody, and it's not Chris Rock. Today we're talking about an incident on the red carpet that left one paparazzo with a massive red mark on his face and a fired sign stamped on his forehead. Will was walking the red carpet giving people interviews when a Ukrainian comedian named Vitaly Sejik approached him, a man who is unfortunately world famous for being an absolutely disgusting person towards celebrities. He pretended to be a reporter and began interviewing Will Smith. He suddenly pulled Will towards him and tried to kiss him on his cheeks and mouth. Well, Will obviously did not like that and shoved him back and gave him a little love tap. Just a little backhand to the face. A team of security following Mr. Smith picked this guy up and carried him away like a little toddler that he was. Who knew Will was practicing for his Oscar slaps all the way back then? Sejik was finally reprimanded for his actions, and he was actually made to pay a hefty fine for attempting to force himself on Will Smith. Needless to say, that guy works for himself now. Number 5. Hugh Grant. In 2013, the world was gifted with an awkward interview between model Ashley Graham and Dungeons & Dragons star Hugh Grant. Ashley was trying her best to give a good interview and ask Hugh the hard-hitting questions, like who was he wearing? Was he excited to be there? Did he hope anyone he knew won? You know, good old generic questions they tell you to ask on the first day of work. Hugh was not budging, to the point where she just kinda gave up and let him loose. One of her last questions to Hugh was regarding his cameo in the Netflix film Glass Onion, which he said was barely a full day on set. The incident sparked a ton of backlash, mainly aimed at Hugh for making Ashley's job more and more difficult. But then the narrative switched to, why wasn't she asking him better questions? ABC decided to give the hosting gig to somebody else for next year's Oscars, and it's looking like she won't be making any more interview appearances anytime soon. Number 4. Amy Schumer. In the mid-2010s, comedian Amy Schumer was named one of Time magazine's top 100 most influential people and was made to attend a red carpet event to celebrate with her fellow influencers, 2 of whom were Kanye West and Kim Kardashian. Now, while discussing the incident on the Graham Norton show, she revealed that there was a planned prank on Kim and Ye. Her goal was to get them to crack and smile and get some good fun pics for the event, but Kim and Kanye did not find this situation funny and continued to walk past her as she fell in front of them. Like she just followed forward trying to make a nice little thing out of it. While the moment was meant to create a fun scene, it instead made Amy look like she had a grudge towards Kim and Kanye. While not an interview, the incident on the red carpet did force Comedy Central to postpone a season of her show until things were sorted out with Kim. It turned out that not only did Kim not care, but she did end up finding the incident kind of funny in the end, with these two apparently now being close friends, and Amy even made a cameo on Kim's new reality series, The Kardashians. Number 3. Rashida Jones. The star of comedy giants like The Office and Parks and Rec is an expert at evading uncomfortable and just strange questions. During the Screen Actors Guild Awards in 2015, she was being interviewed by TNT's Danielle Dembski when the actress was told she was very tanned. Well, Rashida replied with a small pause and then told the reporter that she was ethnic, so, you know, duh. Danielle burst into laughter before ignoring the dumb question and moving on, but TNT did not forget. Her producers made it very clear that she needed to do more research before making comments or asking questions to anyone on the carpet. According to TNT, she was let go after the meeting went south and Danielle didn't realize what she had done wrong. Gee, let me think! Number 2. Silka Sibin. While attending the Dutch premiere of his rom-com Music in the Lyrics, Hugh Grant, making another appearance, got the shock of a lifetime after a fan got a little bit too excited and took their admiration to a whole new level. Television journalist Silka Sibin approached Grant and he thought it was an interview, but then she handcuffed herself to him. For about 10 minutes, the patient but frustrated Grant was just waiting and watched as several onlookers started snapping pictures left and right. After the fire department finally released them, Sibin was taken by police. And while this may have seemed like your average Hollywood interaction, the news station that she worked for did not appreciate this gag and she was fired immediately. And at number 1, Ryan Seacrest. Ryan was the man with the mic for a very long time, hosting not only talk shows, but reality game shows as well. Eventually though, he found a nice comfy gig interviewing celebrities on and off the red carpet. In 2018, things changed drastically after allegations of misconduct were brought forward by a former female employee named Susie Hardy. Susie was his personal hairstylist and the job was perfect for a very long time. But according to her, Ryan became very aggressive on several occasions, claiming that the only reason she never said anything was fear that she may lose the financial stability that the job had provided for herself and her daughter. In 2013, the situation finally ended when she expressed her concerns to someone at Human Resources and her employment was terminated. Now, while this was happening, Ryan was still employed as a host and a presenter, so he took to the red carpet that year to interview celebrities and he was met with cold shoulders and sarcastic comments. After the red carpet event, the decision was made to put Ryan on hold for a while until the investigation into the allegations were complete. 3 months later, they concluded that there was insufficient evidence to prove the claims and Ryan got reinstated. I'm not sure why a single mom would lie about something like that. I'm pretty sure Ryan's hiding some shady stuff, but who knows for sure?
In at number 10, Hilary Duff. Hilary Duff was on top of the Disney World for years, starring in the hit show Lizzie McGuire. But after the massive success of the 2003 Lizzie McGuire movie, she demanded more. Since the movie was such a hit, Disney asked for a second Lizzie McGuire movie to be made, but the movie stalled because of negotiations. Susan Duff, Hilary Duff's mother and manager, says she asked the promised bonus to be paid immediately, but Disney did not want to oblige. Duff also said that Hilary was getting lowballed for the Lizzie McGuire series, and they were paying Hilary $35,000 per episode, even though other networks were offering 6 figures. Because of these contract negotiations, both the TV series and plans for the movie sequel ended. And I am so disappointed because Lizzie McGuire movie is literally Literally one of the best movies of all time, and I would die to see a second. It is so great. In at number 9, Kirstie Alley. 1982 Star Trek II The Wrath of Khan opened with a young Kirstie Alley playing the character Saavik. We eventually learned that Alley is a trainee and it was all a simulation, but those moments with Alley on screen made a deep impact on the whole movie. The character of Saavik appears twice more in the franchise, but not played by Alley. When asked why she was booted from the sequels, Alley told StarTrek.com in 2016 that it was because of money. Apparently she didn't ask for more money, instead the franchise offered her less money for a sequel, which is like basically unheard of. She said, quote, "That never made sense to me, like you're not paying me as much for the first one and it's a bigger role." She claimed she tried to inquire about the lowball, but instead of answers, she was just cut. In at number 8, Crispin Glover. In 1985's Back to the Future, Crispin Glover played Marty McFly's dad, George McFly, and even though the movie was uber successful, Glover did not appear in the sequel. His absence in the second film even led to a lawsuit. The story is that Glover was unhappy with the script for the second movie and demanded the same salary as the film's lead, Michael J. Fox, who made $1 million. But in 2012, Glover says that was a lie, and he was only offered $150,000 for the sequel, which was half the amount offered to stars who had similar sized roles in the film. He also said when he tried to negotiate, the offer was actually decreased by $25,000. The film ended up casting someone else in Glover's role, but put a mold of Glover's face on this actor's face. Then Glover sued the film for using his likeness and got $760,000. In at number 7, Bruce Willis. The Expendables franchise is full of huge stars like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jason Statham, to name a few. Bruce Willis joined the cast in the 2010 movie, along with a 2012 sequel where he picked up a larger role. And even though he was set to star in the third film, it didn't happen, and Harrison Ford took the role instead. Later it was reported that monetary disputes were the reason for the change. The Hollywood Reporter exposed, quote, "Willis was offered $3 million for 4 days of consecutive work, and he allegedly demanded a pay bump to $4 million, $1 million per day, but the studio did not oblige and Ford was cast within days." In at number 6, Marcus Chong. Marcus Chong, who played Tank in The Matrix, was one of the only members of the cast to survive. However, he didn't show up in the sequels, causing suspicion. The franchise wanted Chong to be a part, however he claims he was offered too little. In Chong's own 45-minute YouTube documentary called The Marcus Chong Story, he says he was offered $250,000 to appear in 2003's The Matrix Reloaded and The Matrix Revolutions, but he wanted $1 million. The film said no, so strangely enough Chong came back asking for $500,000 or to work for free. Didn't really understand that part, but apparently the franchise was done with the games and decided to just cut him instead. Halfway at number 5, Sean Connery. Sean Connery is known by many as the best James Bond, and fans were devastated when he was quickly replaced. He first played the role of 007 in 1962, then he played in 4 more movies before he decided to ask for more money from the franchise. By the time Connery starred in 1967's You Only Live Twice, for which he was paid $750,000 plus a 25% share of merchandising, he was apparently just kinda bored with the role and took a risky move by asking for more money. He demanded $1 million, but the franchise declined. As a result, George Lazenby was given the role, to the dismay of fans. After that film was hit with terrible reviews, Connery was asked back and he made $1.25 million for 1971's Diamonds Are Forever. And at number 4, Maggie Rhee. Maggie starred on The Walking Dead right from the first season and was a staple in the show, but in season 9, she disappeared from the show, leaving many to wonder why. It was later reported that money was the reason. The show did not meet her monetary demands, so she was cut from season 9 and went on to play in ABC's action dramedy Whiskey Cavalier. But apparently her time with the show was already on the rocks, and she was bored of playing the same character for 8 years. Apparently she also wanted to explore comedy and more happy projects. In the end, since she had not been killed off the show, just written off, she did come back for the 11th and final season. In at number 3, Suzanne Summers. Suzanne Summers starred in ABC's Three's Company, which was one of the most successful sitcoms ever. The show chronicled 2 women living with a man in a house in Santa Monica and followed their antics. After a few years, Summers decided to request a raise for this successful show, especially since learning her male counterpart on the show, John Ritter, was paid $150,000 per episode, while she was only making $30,000 per episode. Apparently when she confronted the network about this, they offered her a $5,000 per episode raise, but that wasn't enough. so she didn't show up for the filming and was fired. She was then replaced on the show with a look-alike character. Apparently her firing was a part of a bigger picture, and there were other women who wanted more money from the network, so they decided to make an example out of Summers by cutting her. And at number 2, Terrence Howard. Marvel fans first saw Terrence Howard playing the role of James Rhodey Rhodes, who later became War Machine. But then in Iron Man 2, Howard was not in the film, rather Don Cheadle played Rhodey in the MCU after that. Howard did not keep his anger to himself and openly discussed why he was axed. In 2013 on Watch What Happens Live, Howard told Andy Cohen that when it was time to make Iron Man 2, Marvel only wanted to pay him 1/8 of what they owed him. Howard even reached out to Robert Downey Jr., who did not offer any support. Howard even claimed he took a $1 million pay cut to get Downey Jr. cast in his role, to which Marvel denied. In the end, Howard retracted many of his callouts and claimed him and Downey Jr. were on good terms again. And finally, number 1, Robert Duvall. Duvall first became critically acclaimed through his role as Tom Hagen in The Godfather. He even earned an Academy Award nomination for his work in the film and starred in the second movie as well. But he did not make it into part 3 of the film, apparently due to money. Speaking in 2004, Duvall explained that he not only left because he wanted more money than he was making, he was more so just disgusted at how much more some other actors were making. Saying, quote, "I said I would work easily if they paid Al Pacino twice what they paid me, that's fine. But not 3 or 4 times, which is what they did." In 2010, he explained he had no regrets about not appearing in the film because of the poor reviews that it got.